All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Ray Huang's incredible book, 1587, A Year of No Significance. So we've seen how the massive Ming Empire was kind of grinding to a halt, getting stuck under the weight of its own traditions. But history, it's not just about these giant empires, right? It's really about the people, the individuals trapped inside that machine. Today, we're zooming in on one of those guys, an official named Hai Jui. His story is a perfect example of how a system can be so stiff, so rigid, that it ends up breaking its very best and most honorable people. So let's get into it. Okay, so to really get Hai Jui, you've got to picture the world he was living in. Now, on paper, everything revolved around the emperor, right? He's the center of the universe. But in reality, the whole empire was actually run by this massive, sprawling bureaucracy, an army of scholar officials. And this whole system was built on a foundation of tradition, rules, and a really specific moral code. And then into this super rigid world walks Hai Jui, a guy who took that moral code, well, let's just say he took it more seriously than literally anyone else. And that's our guy, Hai Jui. I mean, it's almost impossible to explain just how much of an oddball he was for his time. You have to understand, this was an age of, let's call it flexible morality. Compromise, looking the other way, a little bit of corruption here and there. And Hai Jui, he was an absolute purist. It's like he walked straight out of the pages of an ancient Confucian textbook. He didn't just, nod along with the old ideals. He lived them. And man, did that make everyone around him uncomfortable. And this quote right here? This basically sums up his entire philosophy. For Hai Jui, being an official wasn't a job. It wasn't a ladder to crime to get rich. It was a duty, a sacred one. He's basically saying, hey, you want to make a profit? Great. Go be a farmer, an artist, a merchant. But if you're going to be an official, your one and only job is to serve the people. That's it. Full stop. And this wasn't just some nice-sounding phrase for him. It was the absolute foundation for everything he did. So let's really get into this mindset of his. What were his core principles? First off, officials are public servants. They work for the people, not the other way around. Simple enough. Second, morality is black and white. There's no it depends, no gray areas. It's either right or it's wrong. Third, and this is a big one, the law is for everybody. Doesn't matter if you're a poor farmer or a powerful governor, same rules apply. And last but not least, being frugal wasn't just a good idea, it was a moral duty. And believe me, this wasn't just stuff he talked about. He lived this code, and he was absolutely fanatical about it. So when I say fanatical, what do I mean? Get this. This guy was a high-ranking official, okay? And yet, he lived so simply, so sparsely, that the one time his household bought 2 pounds of meat, it became the talk of the town. It was actual news. Can you imagine? He even grew his own vegetables on the property of his official home. This was way beyond just saving money. It was a performance. He was making a public statement, setting a crazy high standard of virtue for himself and, in his mind, for everybody else. So what happens when you have a guy this intense in a world built on compromise? Well, you can probably guess. He became a legend. The regular folks absolutely loved him. Why? Because the rich and powerful couldn't stand him, and they were scared of him. His entire reputation was built on these moments of just incredible, you could even say reckless, defiance. Let me tell you one of the most famous stories about him. It's great. So he's just a low-level county magistrate at the time. The son of this super powerful governor general, a guy named Hu Zongxian, rolls into town. And this kid is arrogant, demanding all this special treatment. So what does Hai Jui do? He doesn't just say no. He has the kid arrested and confiscates all his illegally gotten money. But here's the brilliant part. He then writes a letter to the powerful governor general and says, "Sir, I've arrested an imposter who's going around claiming to be your son." His reasoning was pure genius. He said, "You, sir, are such a noble and upright man, there's no way your son could possibly be this corrupt." See what he did there? He used the system's own official ideals as a weapon to take down the powerful. It's just perfect. And he didn't just stop with the sons of governors. Oh, no. He went all the way to the top. He took on the emperor himself. He wrote this formal document, a memorial they called it, straight to the throne. And in it, he basically calls the judging emperor vain, cruel, selfish, the whole laundry list of moral failures. This was insane. This was a guaranteed death sentence. And sure enough, they threw him in prison. He only got out alive because the emperor happened to die before they could execute him. The message was crystal clear. In Hai Jui's book, nobody, not even the Son of Heaven, was above the law. So now the system has a problem, right? What do you do with a guy like Hai Jui? You can't bribe him, you can't scare him, and because he's a folk hero, you can't just make him disappear. So they came up with a creative solution. They decided to give him the ultimate test. They made him governor of Nancy Li. Think the area around modern Suzhou. Now, this wasn't just some random province. This was the richest, most developed, and by far the most corrupt region in the entire empire. It was like they were throwing him into the lion's den.
And the reaction to his appointment? Oh, it was instant. His reputation had already arrived. The powerful, wealthy families, the very people whose fortunes were built on all the stuff Hai Jui hated, they were absolutely terrified. You know what they did? They literally painted over their big, fancy, show-off red gates with a plain, humble, black color. They were trying to fly under the radar, hoping the new governor wouldn't notice them. It was a pretty clear signal that a major showdown was coming. And this conflict was deep. It was fundamental. See, Hai Jui showed up with a simple and pretty radical agenda. He was going to enforce these old, forgotten laws about how much land one person could own. He wanted to give illegally grabbed land back to the peasants. But here's the problem. The entire ruling class, the gentry, their whole economic foundation was built on owning massive amounts of land. He was taking a black and white rulebook and trying to apply it to a system that was built to survive in the gray areas, on favors and backroom deals. He wasn't just going after a few bad apples. He was attacking the entire orchard.
The pushback, as you can imagine, was immediate and it was brutal. His policies were actually empowering the peasants, so much so that the local elites started to panic, claiming the whole social order was falling apart. This quote here is from an official impeachment document, a formal complaint to get him fired. It says that under his rule, tenants weren't paying rent and debtors weren't repaying loans. Now, whether that was totally accurate or just a smear campaign, it doesn't really matter. The point is, the powers that be saw him as a force of pure chaos, a direct threat to their money and their power. And this really gets us to the core tragedy of Hai Jui's whole life. Here's a man who loved the system, who desperately wanted to serve it and make it better. And that very same system just could not handle him. He was incompatible. They couldn't bribe him, they couldn't break him. So the only thing left for the bureaucracy to do was to spit him out. It was like an organ transplant rejection. The body just saw him as a foreign object and attacked.
And, it wasn't just his enemies. Even people who should have been on his side thought he was just too much. This quote is from Zhang Zhuzheng. And this guy was the top reformer of the time, the most powerful man in government. And even he is basically telling Hai Jui, look, I get it. I see what you're doing, but these people haven't played by the rules in forever. You can't just come in here, slam a rule book on the table, and expect everything to change. It's too much, too fast. Think about that. Even the #1 reformer in the country thought Hai Jui was too extreme to function in the real world.
And so, yeah, the inevitable happened. He lasted just 8 months as governor. 8 months. The political heat just got too intense. He was attacked from every direction, formally impeached, and in the end, he was forced to resign. He was sent home, basically a political exile, and he stayed there for 15 years. His grand attempt to fix the system from the inside, it was a complete and total failure.
Take a look at this. This is some of Hai Jui's actual calligraphy. And it is such a perfect metaphor for who he was as a person. Just look at the strokes. They're stiff, they're strong, they're completely unbending. There's no graceful flow here, no compromise. It's just stark, principled. And that's exactly what his vision for China was. He wasn't trying to build a new future. He was trying to resurrect an old past. He wanted to get rid of all the messy complications of a growing commercial economy and take China back to a simpler time, back to the simple, moral, farming-based society that the dynasty's founder had imagined hundreds of years before.
So his vision was all about looking backwards. And this really hits home when you pull the camera back and look at what's happening in the rest of the world at the exact same time. While Hai Jui is in China trying to turn back the clock and simplify the economy, what's happening in Europe? Well, they're laying the groundwork for a whole new world of global commerce. You've got the Royal Exchange opening in London, a hub for trade. The Dutch Republic is being born, a nation literally built on trade and finance. Banking and commercial law are developing at lightning speed. The rest of the world was sprinting towards more complexity, more trade, more finance, and Hai Jui was trying his best to run the other way. Okay, so fast forward 15 years. After all that time in political exile, Hai Jui, now an old man, is actually called back to serve in the government. But you have to understand, this wasn't a real comeback. It wasn't about giving him power. By this point, she was a living legend, the ultimate symbol of integrity. So the court brought him back, not to actually do anything, but to be seen. They wanted to use his shiny reputation. He was basically a living monument, not a government minister. And if anyone thought that maybe, just maybe, 15 years of retirement had mellowed him out a little, well, they were very, very wrong. His first big proposal when he got back to court, he wanted to revive an old, incredibly brutal punishment for corruption. And I mean brutal. He wanted to literally flay corrupt officials alive and stuff their skins with straw. I'm not kidding. It was completely shocking, totally out of step with the times, and it was all the proof anyone needed that Hai Jui had not changed, not one bit. Still just as hardcore and just as impractical as he'd ever been.
And in the end, the emperor himself delivered the final verdict on Hai Jui, and it sums up the whole paradox perfectly. The system had finally figured out what to do with him. Make him a symbol. He was useful as a moral standard, someone everyone could point to and admire, from a safe distance. But when it came to actually running things, the emperor said he was not competent. So the empire could celebrate his goodness, but it would never, ever actually follow his lead. He was the hero they loved to praise, but could never, ever use.
Which leaves us with a really big, kind of haunting question, doesn't it? Because the story of Hai Jui isn't really about one man failing. It's about an entire system failing him. When your society's most famously moral and honest official is considered incompetent because he's so moral and honest, what does that say about your society? I mean, if the only thing your system can do with its best man is put him on a pedestal, push him to the side, and basically just wait for him to die, can that system really be fixed? Is it even worth saving?